Good evening and welcome to the rest of the news. We have a really exciting situation in our country today. Things are happening very rapidly, and we have Ed Holloway with us tonight, who is a former state representative, to give us some insight on this whole situation, all these different things that are happening.
Well, it's a complex situation, and we were talking about it before and what's happening in this country with Obamacare and the situation in Boston and other issues that are being so complex and so different and so collectively at the same time that people are having a hard time getting their handle on it. And what has happened is that the liberal philosophy, which has taken into account a very close relationship with the government, to the point that it's, I think there's a new book out that says that we've reached a point where liberalism is a new state religion.
Oh, yeah.
And it's very, very accurate, because what's happening with Obamacare is very similar. I was in Russia and talked to the people there about, they told me they had free medical care, but the problem was if you could ever get access to it. There was never enough the medical situation to go around, and this is exactly where we're headed in this stage. We're in stage 1 now, and that's at stage 2, and everything else became underground. And in that process, people were having to go and trade and do other things to get medical treatment that had nothing to do with the state, and it was devastating. But we've got another problem with Obamacare, and the state of Kentucky has just signed on today for Medicaid. We now have 22% of our population is on Medicaid, and that number will grow.
A lot, probably.
And we've reached the point there with the whole medical situation, and I think that comment by one of the members of Congress that it's a railroad
train wreck.
Heading.
A Democrat said that.
Democrats said that. But the problem is the Democratic Party, for example, has been hijacked by the liberal leadership, and that goes back really over 100 years. It's all
gradually been taking it over.
And it's been very slowly, and what it's been is an outward attack, a very covert type of attack on the removal of religion and Christianity from any influence at all in government or any other level. And that's caused a major problem. And it's continuing and is growing in capacity. It started with our universities, where Christian attitudes and programs are no longer allowed.
Yeah.
That they removed those. And the ironic part is that all of our universities were once founded by Christian religion. Each one of the universities, from Harvard on down.
Yeah.
And in that process, they have taken it and removed Christianity completely from anything connected with the campus. Our education has started at the elementary level with indoctrination all the way through the university, so that we're now in about the third generation of people who have no knowledge of the history of the United States, the formation of every principle that this country was founded on, and why they had a separation of church and state. An original concept was because everything in Europe at that time was state-run religion. And this is exactly where we're headed today in the United States.
Only the government is the God.
Right, the government is the God.
We were talking about this article that it goes into what you just said, that the sort of the radical left-wing movement has taken over most of the Democrat Party.
They have, and they've hijacked it, and that's the leadership, and they no longer reflect the true feeling of members of the Democratic Party from the rank and file that have gone on for a long time, and the ability to work through compromise and other things it's either their way or no way. And they've forced that situation from the leadership on down, and it's become extremely hard to accomplish anything. And we're losing things very slowly. We started with removal of prayer from school.
Yeah.
Then we got rid of the Ten Commandments. Then we moved into the other areas. We allow diversity, multiculturalism, all of those things that are dividing the people into various classes and various other programs that keep the United States from being what it was founded to become and what it became and why it was the most successful and most democratic, and that's another word, that democracy in its truest form is mob rule, but democracy was never used in this country. This was founded as a republic.
Right.
To avoid that kind of context. And the first one was Woodrow Wilson, who said we've saved the world for democracy. And it was not that, and it's gone on, and it's slowly and deliberately headed in that direction. And we're actually copying a situation that exists in Europe, and you can see what's going on there.
Yeah. Now, this article, it says that not only that the radical left-wing element is taking control of the Democratic Party, but they're using it as a battering ram whose purpose is to destroy basically the strength of the United States by...
Well, the purpose of all of that is in order to make everybody equal in income, equal in every other aspect, you have to destroy everything that this country was built on.
Yeah, like the idea that if you work hard, you can get ahead in the world.
Exactly, and everybody have his own ambition and drive
Right.
and what he was able to accomplish. And those were the things that took people like Carnegie, who made the steel industry what it was, and the rest of them, who would become, and others that came here with maybe $100 in their pocket,
Right.
and were able to work their way into very lucrative positions. Now, that's a case now of envy. We got to get rid of all of the so-called rich, and that's a situation that is increasing. And equality, there is nobody nobody is equal. We're all different. We all have our own abilities and others, and the problem all started with what happened in pagan Rome.
Right.
And the pagan Romans, homosexuality, lack of marriage, any of those things, the breakdown of all that system, and the whole thing was into a hedonistic lifestyle. You could do anything you wanted, nothing happened. All you could do is just live life to the fullest. There was no hereafter, there
Right.
was no nothing, there's no fear of reprisal. And that was where the birth of Christianity came. And in that process, the long fight of Christianity from that point forward has been a long and a laborious process. And now it's in the process of reverting back to what the Roman pagan situation was. And it's a very difficult situation that's developing, and it's going to be a difficult one to reverse.
Here's some of what you were talking about. It says, this is Lieutenant General retired William Boykin. He says, if chaplains and other personnel are censored from offering the full solace of the gospel, there is no religious freedom in the military. And that seems to be what they're trying to do.
This is exactly what's happened. This is, again, going back to diversity. The diversity, we cannot...
That's the excuse they use.
We cannot have Christianity, we can have this, we can have that, we can have... All of those things have to be removed so that we cannot offend anyone. The classic example is what they proposed involving our veterans hospitals. They made a ruling that you could no longer have a priest or a minister come in and pray. You could not bring a Bible into the hospital.
Right.
A priest could not give last rites to a dying man. All of those things, but they've backed off from that temporarily.
Well, they need, because people
right.
screamed about it.
Exactly.
And that's what we need to do now. And, write your congressman and tell them, hey, they're taking religious freedom out of the military.
And it goes to every level now. And then if you look at some of the violence that's been going on in the military, it can relate back to where that is. But the ministers in our churches and others, you cannot say anything political from the pulpit. You have fear of losing your tax-exempt status and other threats that are being imposed on the religious community, and the ministers themselves are very reluctant to teach the basics of Christianity because
Or
of that
even
fear.
honesty, or
Right.
the Ten
You're
Commandments,
right.
or anything. They
All
don't
of
want
the-
to talk
all of-
about that.
All of those are being removed from our society. The same thing is happening with Christmas. You can no longer say Merry Christmas. You can say Happy Holidays, and they're instructing the corporations are threatening with some kind of covert action
Yeah.
if your employees are saying Merry Christmas to people to come in, and and they remove the nativity scenes from
Yes.
courthouses and other places and on public property. They're removing the cross from any location, some of which have been located by veterans of
Yeah.
the First World War and others that are under attack, and it's at every level. So if we remove Christianity, we remove all morals, then you've got a situation that makes it rampant for the liberal. And liberal is a name that goes back. They've changed it several times, but it has to do with an atheistic lifestyle, hedonistic, and nothing is it. There's no hereafter. The atheists and others are taking an active part in that, and it just continues.
You're exactly right. And a lot of our problems in this country started when they took prayer out of the public schools, and the Ten Commandments
Right.
and the Bible and creation science. All of that had been in there for 200 years.
Right.
And all of a sudden, these bigwigs on the Supreme Court say, oh, we don't want children to hear about God or Jesus. They would say, oh, no, that's terrible.
Well, if you look at Allah and what happened with Muhammad, Muhammad had a problem with Mecca, and they had more or less exiled him up to Medina, and he was able to come back in. At that time, the Arabs had several hundred, over 300 deities.
Wow.
And the three of these, each one, it was very, very, very much like it was in Rome and in Greek society. You had a god for everything, the god of the air, the wind, the sea,
Yeah.
all of the on. And in that process, they had these, and then he said his tribe had represented the god of the moon, the lady of the moon. And when he came back and was able to conquer Medea, he then went into the monastery, or whatever they called their religious center, and he was able to throw out all of these deities except the one which is the goddess of the moon. And there's only one God, and that is Allah, the goddess of the moon. And that's why you see the crescent on everything there. And that was exactly how that evolved. And he was a very angry person. And the only thing he wanted to do was expand his version of Islam across the world so that they're all one religion. And that's part of what's going on and what we've had. And then when we had the situation that developed in the Middle East in World War I and the breakup of the Ottoman Empire, all of those countries that were created by both the British and the French, and all of these boundaries and dividing families and tribes and others, and created a chaotic situation that none of those people wanted, but were impossible for them to reverse. So you got all these boundaries. It's like Pakistan and Afghanistan, where they have the Pashtuns that are a tribe that, and in the Islam and in the Arab world, the tribe is the main thing.
Yeah.
Number one is the family. The second is the tribe. The country and things of that nature come way down the line. So they've split up the tribes. They made all these things. The problem in Libya between the East and the West, and between what goes on is the two different tribes in the same country. They never have liked each other. They've constantly fight back and forth between Tripoli and the rest of the country. And they got all of those conflicts going on, and we get in the middle of it, and we don't understand their culture, we don't understand the people, we don't understand their goals. And if you look at Afghanistan, going all the way back to Alexander, when he went through, he was never able to conquer the people, the tribes in Afghanistan. The Russians tried. And we were then in the background of that, supplying them and keeping that war going, because it was our feeling that they needed to experience what we did in Vietnam. So the Russians were then moved back out of there, and then we walked back out of it and left a vacuum that created the Taliban. So all of these things are happening politically with no understanding of international cultures and other conflicts that are created. So it just comes and goes and ebbs and flows, but we create, nobody thinks about the unintended consequences of certain actions. It's the immediate political outcome of whatever is necessary for the re-election.
Yeah.
And the situation that happened with the death of the ambassador and
Yeah.
all of the people there was a situation where we couldn't talk about it, do anything about it, because we're right in the middle of a campaign.
Yeah.
So that is going on. So all of these things collectively are happening, and it's very hard for the average person who's taking care of his family and raising their children to get a grasp of what's really happening to their life and what the future looks like if we don't reverse it.
Well, Ed, what you are talking about is about basically how they expelled God from the public schools. And apparently the governor of Florida has signed a bill that would put inspirational message or prayer back in the public schools in Florida. Rick Scott, the governor of Florida. That was back in July of 2012. And then the governor of Mississippi also put religious liberties back into their public schools so children could pray. And we think that we need that in Kentucky too. We need to put prayer back in the public schools. So we have put together this petition that is meant to go to our legislators and our governor to encourage them to put prayer back in the public schools in Kentucky, just like they have in Florida and Mississippi. And we would like to send you a copy of this petition if you call 893-2444. 893-2444. And we'll send you this petition, and we will start working to reverse some of these things that we're talking about, how they're trying to get rid of God in a lot of ways, starting with removing prayer from the public schools. And also in this letter, it talks about the 26 DVDs that we have now that we'd like to send you about these various issues like socialized medicine. Here's one on how Hitler was voted into Austria. And here's Ben Carson in his address to the inaugural breakfast, and just a lot of DVDs. And we'll be glad to send you the list and any DVDs that you want. Again, just call that number, 893-2444. And if no one is there to answer it, you can just leave your name and phone number and we'll call you back. But this is a tremendous resource that we would like to get started on putting God back into our schools. So I'm thinking that's a good start to some of these things we were talking about.
It really is, and one of the problems that we have, and this is, we're trying to cover so much in a very short period of time, it makes it very difficult because there's a 1,000 different things that go on. But what the average person has to do is become informed on their own, because you're not going to get it from the traditional,
Right.
from the media. from other areas that are traditionally out there that you used to rely on.
Right, right.
And I'm from a generation that welfare didn't exist, Medicaid didn't come in until 1965, and a lot of these other things that sound good on the surface, but the unintended consequences and the fallouts are devastating. And this is where you have to inform yourself, become educated, and so that when these radical liberals come off with a statement or something, you have the background and the knowledge to refute it.
Right.
And to explain the truth and go back, because what they have traditionally say is that, oh, you don't understand, you don't know what you're talking about, and then they dismiss you very quickly. And without the foundation of Christianity and other information, particularly history, going back to the Romans and coming forward, and watch how this socialism has been tried time and time again. It's been a total disaster, a total failure, has never worked. And the attitude that, well, this time it's going to be different is just mind-boggling, but this is exactly what they believed. And they started in the 60s as a momentum, because they started with the Weathermen and others and radical groups and the sit-ins and the demonstration, the explosions that were going on. Al Ayers, for example, whose girlfriend was killed in a bomb explosion where they were making bombs in Greenwich Village, and it was full of nails and other things in order to kill a lot of people. He's now a noted professor at a university. He gave the commencement exercise speech at Kent State, and others like that have come to the forefront, and they now are respected because people don't know the history, the background, and the other information. But they decided at that point in the 60s, when all of the radical activity and the burnings and the sit-ins and all that wasn't working, they had a meeting of the Students for Democratic Society of all the local chapters all over the country, came together and decided it's not working the way we wanted our revolution to work. We're going to have to work from the inside.
Yeah.
You're going to have to go into the universities and become professors and become tenured. You're going to have to go into politics. You're going to have to go into these areas. You have to go into the political parties, become the leaders, and then you can put into implementation the socialistic programs that we look forward to in the future.
Well, a lot of that is in these DVDs and this petition. So if you can call right now, 893-2444, we'll get you the DVDs, and we've now got over 200 people showing these DVDs to other people and explaining some of these points that you mentioned. And it's all free. There's no charge for any of those DVDs. So if you would call right now, we'll get you one of those out. And it's, like you say, so many different issues that it's hard to cover all of them, but most of them are covered in that 26 different DVDs. And we would just encourage you to get the DVD and look at it, maybe show it to somebody else or just give it to somebody else, and then call that same number, 893-2444, and we'll send you more.
One of the things is there's a lot of the things that are in the DVDs are a very good starting point. It takes about 30 minutes to 45 minutes to watch one, and it's a good thing in a setting where you have several of your friends come together, and you're sitting around the evening, and instead of watching some of the other soap operas or something else, watch the DVD and discuss the content of that. That's the way you self-educate, because each one will be able to contribute something from their frame of reference, that some of their experiences, and that is the part of growth that's necessary to get active and changing this, and to volunteer to some of these situations where you can make a difference. We've had that situation develop with all of the foundations and others. They're the ones, the radicals are the ones that volunteer to become part of the board and become active in that, and then they divert the funds that were no longer intended, the original intention, into areas of left-wing radical extremism.
You know, with God's help, we can turn this around. And if each one of us gets involved and watches the DVDs, give them away, read on it. You just came up with a fantastic new book.
Liberalism is a state religion.
Yeah.
And it documents it from actually starting with the intellectuals in Europe in the in the 1800s, people like Karl Marx and others that the universities picked up, and that's where the situation began, and it's continued in one form or another ever since.
Here it says that those bombers in Boston went to a mosque there, sort of a radical left-wing mosque in Boston.
Well, that was part of the early information, but at the same time, that mosque had rejected the older brother and told him that he was
too radical for them.
And that's one of the reasons he went back to Chechnya. And Chechnyans have had a history going all the way back to the Second World War and back to actually to the breakup of the Ottoman Empire. But they were fighting in Yugoslavia against the Germans. And the British decided that Tito was doing a better job, and they cut off the Chechens. And they've been mad at the West ever since because they were doing they were a rebel group that were fighting against the Nazis. So it's the thing that unintended consequences and things that have their root way back that people don't understand today go back, and they have a very long memory. One of the things that I found was interesting when I was in the Middle East was a story of a Bedouin chieftain who had been offended some 20 years earlier, and he finally got revenge. And the members of the tribe said, "What was the rush?"
And what was the rush?
Well,
after 20 years,
and that's kind of their philosophy. They have this, and to illustrate that, I was in Morocco at a ceremony where a young man was coming of age, and in the process, his father gave to him the key to their home in Spain. He said, "I may not in my lifetime be able to go, but you will." And they are determined to take back Spain, which they were removed from by Isabel and Ferdinand in 1492. The Moors lost and were sent back to North Africa. So there's a long history of what these people in the Muslim world are thinking.
Right. Here's another bumper sticker. This is very important because as you drive down the road, you see the word Jesus. You know that this is an important person that's driving that car because they realize that this is what they're trying to get rid of. They're trying to get rid of Christianity, and we would like to send you one of these free today also. Again, if you just call that number, 893-2444. Okay, Ed, thank you very much for being with us today, and tune in again next week for the rest of the news.